And we're moving on with our sub-assemblies. So we finished the front. Now we're going to move into the passenger section sub-assembly. So go ahead and do a file new. Go ahead and go standard inch IAM for our assembly. Hit create. And let's do a save as right away into your T9 folder. Now it's not going to be called, it's going to be called the T9 passenger section sub assembly. So T9 passenger section sub assembly, you can hit save. First thing we're going to want to do is place in our passenger section and ground it. So left click, right click OK, or you can hit escape, right click, ground that, and then let's go ahead and constrain. Oh, actually I got to bring in stuff first before I can constrain. So I'm going to place in the passenger base, and then I need to place in the 1-block socket, which is going to go on this side. Hit escape, and then place in a 2-block socket, which is going to go on the other side. Right click, say OK. And then we also need to place in our windshield. Open, place that in as well. Alright, so first thing we'll do, how about let's constrain the base to the passenger section. So I'm going to go constrain. I'm going to orbit underneath and click on this bottom face of the base. Orbit back up, click on this face right here. So now we're good there. Hit apply, and again I just used a make constraint. And then I'm going to click on this face right here. Make sure it's the face and not the edge. And I'm going to constrain that to this face and hit apply. And then the last one I got to do is this right face, which is right here. Left click that, orbit, left click here, hit apply. So now the base has been fully constrained inside of the passenger section. If I click and drag it, it won't let me, which I know it's fully constrained then. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do the windshield. So for the windshield, I'm going to go back to constrain. I'm going to be using a make constraint again. Now remember, this is the front portion of the car, so we want the front here facing in that direction. And we want to make sure we're getting the little tabs, the faces of those little rectangular tabs. So I want to make sure, so here's the front. I want to make sure I'm grabbing that front face of that tab right there. So I'm going to click that front face, and I'm going to constrain it to the front interface here. So just like that, and then hit apply. Next, I'll go ahead and use maybe, let's say, the right side here. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because we're using a clear material. So you got to make sure that you're getting the outer face of that rectangular shape. So I'm going to click on that outer face right there, and I'm going to constrain it to this interface right here. Hit apply. The last thing that we need to do is constrain it vertically up and down. If I hit close right now and I try and move this, it only moves up and down, right? So if I go back into constrain, I pretty much just want to constrain this face right here to this face right here. And now that has been constrained. Hit apply, close that. If you try and click and drag it, it won't let you. Go ahead and hit the save button to start saving that sub-assembly. Alright, the last thing we got to do is constrain the sockets. Now, I did notice a few minor errors with the passenger base or passenger section. So we need to make some adjustments on this front cutout and this rear cutout to accommodate those single and double sockets. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on the passenger section to get into that part file. Notice everything else goes transparent. And then let's work on this front one first, which was extrusion. If you start hovering over these, they become red. It's extrusion 3. So I got to expand that, go into that sketch, and we need to adjust some numbers here. This should be 2.5. This should be 1. And then our dimensions, this one should be 0.335. And then this one should be 0.265. So go ahead, just make sure your numbers match mine, but we're changing all 4 of those dimensions to accommodate that part that we're going to constrain in there. And then I'm going to hit Finish Sketch. Notice how it updated. It got a little bit bigger to be able to fit this. And then remember, to get back into the assembly, I'm just going to double click over here in my browser on that assembly up here, the T9 passenger. So double click that up there. And then now I'm back in the assembly, and now I can constrain this to that. So I'm going to go Constrain, and I'm going to be using again the outer edges to this little lip that's on the front. So I'm gonna, or I shouldn't say edges, I should say faces, because I'm going to first constrain this left little face. There it is right there, to this face right here. Hit Apply. Then while I'm right here, I'm going to go ahead and click this top face, orbit, constrain that to this face, hit Apply. And then the last one we're going to do is a flush. So I'm going to switch for this to flush right here. Click that. And that's going to be from this front face to this face right there. And then hit Apply. So now if I try and click and drag that, that thing is fully constrained. Looks nice. Sitting in there flush. Perfect. Alright, last one we got to do is over here. And again, this one also had a few mistakes. I'm going to move that out of the way. So I'm going to double click back into the passenger section again. So you could just double click on the part out here. And then I'm going to, we got to find that where we made that cut in the back. That was extrusion 4. If you look, it's highlighted red there. So I'm going to expand that, go into the sketch, and we're going to adjust a few numbers here. Actually, yeah, a few numbers back here. And you know what? Just go ahead and click on the 1 inch and hit delete on the keyboard. Click the 2.5 and hit delete on the keyboard. We're just going to do a bunch of perimeter dimensions, so we'll have 4 dimensions. So I deleted those 2. Alright, let's start with this one. This should be 0.385. This one should be 0.3. Now I'm going to add a dimension, so I'm going to go Dimension Tool, and I'm going to go from this line to this line. That should also be 0.3. And then I'm going to add another dimension from this line to this line, which should be 0.385. So double check your measurements, make sure you got the exact same thing as me. When you're done, you can hit Finish Sketch. So we're done editing that part file. Notice that that one got a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to scroll back up in my model browser over here, double click on the assembly icon to get back into the assembly. And then last thing I got to do is constrain this one. Now to help me out, I'm going to do that free rotate again. So I'm going to click on the part, do a free rotate, just try and get it somewhat orientated in the direction that I want. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of getting it a little bit here in the direction that I want it. So something like that. Hit escape when you're done. I'm going to orbit around to the back here now. We're going to do the same thing we did on the front part. We're going to use the outer faces of this front tab. So I'm going to start with this face right here. And then I'm going to constrain that to this face right here. Hit Apply. And I can do, what was the other one? I'm going to close this for a second. I'm going to pull this part out a little bit so I can get these faces a little bit easier. And I'm going to constrain a make constraint with this top face of the lip right there to the top inner face here. hit apply, and then the last one I need to do is a flush. So I'm going to change to flush, and I'm going to do the front face here to this face right here, and then hit apply, and then now I can close that, orbit around, and now this middle passenger section subassembly is done. Go ahead and save. If this pops up, say yes to all. What it's doing is it's just updating those parts that you made changes to. Say OK. And in the next video, we'll do the rear or bed subassembly.